Well, good morning. That was a couple weeks ago. That was 2 weeks ago, and Tony had time this week to throw that little video together. Pretty cool. It reminds us how much fun we had that week and how great VBS is. And the kids are dismissed. They don't have to wait for me. They're headed out, huh? It was a great week. It was a great week for VBS, and it took a lot of people. You saw a lot of kids, and it was a lot of fun. So I hope you guys had a great week this past week. It was a fun week, and I always get to do fun stuff and get to do cool stuff. So April and I got to have lunch with a lady, Lori here, and as we were talking and she was sharing her story, she's mentioned, maybe I need to be baptized, and we got talking about that. So that's pretty cool. So as I know, Don gave the announcement, but because of scheduling and some medical stuff and availability, and Carter's really itching for us to come over, we thought, no, let's do it next week. So it's a short notice week, but it's pretty cool. Is one of the privileges I have. It's one of the best parts of my job is I get to hear your guys' story. I get to hear how what God has done in your life and where God has taken you, what God's brought you through, and it was pretty cool to hear Lori's story. So that's by far the best part of my job. So I've been getting a lot of sympathy from you guys, and you guys gotta knock it off. Like I've been getting a lot of, "Oh, you're so busy, I don't want to bother you," or "Oh, I thought of this, but I don't want to take up your time." Knock it off. If you have a moment that God has spoke to you, or God has said something you just want to share with God, like please tell us, because that's encouraging, right? That's the best part. That's literally the best part of my job is getting to hear how God interacts with you guys on a weekly basis. And so even if it's something about church, not about church, but God has done something, uh, call me or text me or email me or just pop in and share that, because that's really awesome. That's nothing fills me up more than knowing that God's alive and well and reaching you guys, and you guys have a relationship with God. So it really is a privilege to hear stories and how God is working in your lives and refining you and taking you through stuff. And so I won't tell you Lori's story. She's going to tell you some of it next week at the baptism. But it's cool to hear, and it's very relatable because all of us have some story with God, how we met God, and a lot of it can be the same story with different circumstances. And many in here would tell me, yeah, I could say the same. I was young and I kind of knew about God, but I didn't really know God, or like I knew about Him, but then something happened. Then I had those teenage years, and then I ran from God, or then I got angry because of the circumstances, or then I had this tragedy, or then something happened, and I ran from God, and I was away from God, or I was mad at God, or I was angry with God, and then I hear, but then I saw God like in a new way, or He showed up when I needed Him the most, or He took me through something in my darkest time, or I learned He loved me in a new way, or just like the prodigal son Nathan mentioned, and we talked about a couple weeks ago. Like I came to my senses and I turned from my ways, and I realized like who God was and that God loves me, and there's a new and a fresh sense about God and your relationship, and you're just ready to tell the world. And that's kind of the sense I got. And so it's exciting. And that's why we get baptized. We want to tell the world of what God has done, and now we know God and we're excited. So I'm excited for Lori's story, and we'll have that baptism next week. Now it's short notice, but if you guys have been praying or thinking like I need to get baptized, and I know last time we did a baptism in January, there were a few of you that were like, maybe, I don't know, possibly I'll think about it. So you still have a week. There's plenty of time. Come talk to me. We could make that happen next week. Even if it's next Sunday morning, it's like I said no on Monday, I said no on Tuesday, but it's Sunday. I want to. We could make it happen. The rest of you guys, you're invited. Come on out. Bring your own lunch. Come to the Carter's pool. We're gonna celebrate the baptism, and then we're gonna swim and have some fun afterwards too. So that's always great. That's next Sunday, July 28th, second service. So I know Don announced it, but I'm excited about it, and it was one of the best parts of my week. So I want to share with you guys. Um, in the meantime, we're continuing the Always God series. We started this a few weeks ago. We've been looking at who God is, who God always is, and what God always does. Because society changes quite a bit, our circumstances change quite a bit, things that we see and that we do change quite a bit. Where we live changes, but God doesn't change. He's always the same. And with the past few weeks, we've seen that God is always in control. God is always the same, and He's always speaking to us. Was week one, like He's always speaking through His Word and through creation and through other people. He's always hearing us. He wants to hear from us. He's always hearing our prayers. Um, and God always sees us. He knows what we're doing. He knows where we're at, and He knows what we're going through, and He sees us. So this week we're still talking about the always God, and we're looking at the fact that God is always pursuing us. God always pursues us. Before we do anything, before we make any turn towards God, before we come to our senses, before we have a Bible study, before we have a small group, before any of that stuff, God is pursuing us. And He's pursuing us to enter in and to strengthen and to deepen a personal relationship with each one of us in a personal and real way. He's trying to relate to us, even when we don't want it. Like sometimes we don't want that from God, but He's still pursuing us. And we spend a lot of time in church talking about the ways we need to pursue God. Like we need to chase after God. We need to read our Bible. We need to pray. We need to talk to believers. We need to go to church. We need to pursue God. And that's all true and well and good. But before any of that, God has been pursuing us. And I don't want us to forget that God pursues us before we do anything to pursue Him. There's a movie called Catch Me If You Can. I don't know if it's a good movie. I watched it and I liked it, but I'm not endorsing it by any means. But it's based on a true story of Frank Abagnale Jr., who was played by Leonardo DiCaprio. And it details Frank's life as a con artist. And it started very young. When he was 16, he left his house because his parents were getting divorced and he just didn't want to deal with it. So he left and he became a con artist. He convinced people, he didn't really become one, but he convinced people he was a pilot. He convinced people he was a doctor. He convinced people he was a lawyer. And he did all this before he turned 18. And he also got very good at forging checks and became basically a bank robber, a bank forger, and got very good at that. And hundreds of thousands of dollars he stole for the bank by writing bad checks and making bad checks. Uh, and he went all over the country, all over the world, scamming people and being a con artist. And the problem with that is it's illegal. And sooner or later, the FBI found that out and figured out what was happening and started chasing him. And one detective in particular, his name was Carl Hanratty, and he was played by Tom Hanks. He makes it his goal, his mission, his career to track down Frank and bring him to justice. And so all throughout the movie, they're trying to show ways in which Frank's trying to evade the FBI. And at one point, there's a scene in the movie where he calls up the FBI and talks to Carl Hanratty and says, "Just stop. Like I'm tired. This is a lonely life. I'm exhausted. I can't do this anymore. Will you just please stop chasing me? Stop coming after me?" And the FBI agent says, "No, I'm not going to stop till you surrender, you give up, or you get caught. And I catch you and I put you away. Like that's the only way this is going to stop. I'm not going to end." And in many ways, that's the way God pursues us. He's relentless. We just sang about it. He's relentless pursuing us, and He has always been that way. He's always been searching for us. He's always been chasing after us, and He's not going to give up until we surrender and give up, or we're caught, and it's too late. God is always chasing us. From Genesis to Revelation, we see God is pursuing man. He's pursuing us. And He's pursuing us, and He's trying to reveal His story to us, and He's trying to include us in His story. And that happens all the way at the beginning of the book. God wants us, and so badly that He's pursuing us always. So we're going to start with the story in Genesis chapter 3. It's one you guys should know very well. But it's from the very beginning, God seeking man. And in Genesis chapters 3, 6 through 9, when the woman saw the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some of it and ate it. She gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord as He was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and they hid for the Lord God among the trees in the garden. But the Lord God called to the man, "Where are you?" This is the first recorded question God asked man. Where are you? And He knew, like, God didn't need GPS. He didn't need Life 360 for His creation for Adam. He knew he was hiding in the bush like an idiot, but He's like, "Where are you at? Like, where are you?" And I think the fact that He asked this, and He didn't need Adam to respond, but He wanted and waited for Adam to respond, shows God's grace and God's searching us. So I don't know if you're an expert in anything. I think everybody's an expert in something. You guys are probably more humble than me, so you probably wouldn't admit that you're an expert in something, but I think you guys are all an expert in something. But if you think about something you're really passionate about, and think about something you have a lot of knowledge about, like think of what that is in your life, and it's something. Maybe it's your kids, maybe it's yourself, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's a car, or who knows what. Now think about if somebody, like some dumb kid, like some pump kid, comes up to you and says, "Oh, let me tell you about that thing," and they start telling you about what you know and you're passionate about and you're an expert in, and they're telling you, like, how would you react? Would you be patient and kind with them, or would you be like, "You don't know nothing, you don't know anything"? How would you act? What would you do if you're an expert in something, and someone's trying to tell you about that and they know nothing? I was trying to think of an example of this, and one of my favorites. Uh, a year or two ago, I was fairly new here, probably 2 years ago. I was going through a master's program, and I was talking with Pastor Phil, and I don't know why this didn't happen first service. It's not a sad story, but um, I was talking with Pastor Phil. It might have been a prayer time. We just had one of our times that we just talked about life. We had a lot of those times, and um, it was one of those times anyway. And he asked me because we were talking about life and what we are going through, and I was going through this master's program, and he asked me, "Oh, tell me something you're learning about in your class." And I could have said a lot that day about what I was learning about this class. I was trying to think of something that would relate to him, something that he knew about, something that he was interested in, something that would connect us, And so I'm thinking, I thought, oh, I know. We were having a weekly devotional in this class. It was optional; you didn't have to do it, but it was something you read on Monday and you could think about. And that week happened to be about a hymn, a very popular hymn. I'm not going to tell you what one because it's going to make me look very foolish. But it was a very popular hymn. And now I didn't grow up with hymns. I grew up in the Catholic Church, especially the Protestant hymns you guys sing. I didn't know a lot of them, and I didn't know a lot of people that wrote the hymns. I didn't know a lot of that stuff. It's not. I didn't grow up with it. But I thought about a hymn that we learned in this devotional. And it told the backstory of this very popular hymn, very popular story, I guess, too. And I learned it for the first time and it impacted me. And I was thinking about it all week and I was meditating on it. It was really impactful. So I'm telling Phil about this hymn and the backstory and how great it is. And did you know this? And did you know that? Now, if you don't know Pastor Phil, he has a doctorate's degree in like hymnology. Like he taught master's programs hymnology. And here I am. I don't know. I'm not a music guy. I don't know these hymns. I don't know these people. And I'm telling him what I learned. And he was very gracious with me. He was very, looking back at it now, I'm like, you're an idiot, Jeremy. Like, what were you doing? Like, you're telling him about this hymn. Uh, and he did remind me that he had a doctor's degree. He did remind me that he taught, but he did it so gracefully and he left me with dignity. And and he cared and he wanted to know what I thought about it. He wanted to know what was going on, even though he was an expert and I was not. I was telling him, and he honored me enough, to hear me. And he left me with some dignity. He didn't treat me the way he could have. And I think about what he could have done. He could have said, I have a doctor's degree in this stuff. Like, I'm a doctor in this stuff. And what you're spewing out is like first grade level stuff. And you think you're cool, but you really don't know nothing, kid. He didn't say any of that. He could have. And God was an expert in Adam. He could have, as a creator of the universe, as an all knowing, all powerful God, could have. The minute that Adam took a bite of that apple and started chewing, before he even swallowed, came down from heaven and slapped it out of his mouth and said, and just ripped into him. And said, "Do you know what you're doing?" And as a parent who has kids that sometimes disobey, that would have been a very rational response to a son who disobeyed. Like, that would have been very, very understandable. But he didn't do that. Instead, he approached Adam in a way in which Adam was very familiar with, very accustomed to, very comfortable with. He heard God walking in the cool of the day. He showed up for his daily walk with Adam in the midst of this. God did something that showed Adam some dignity and respect that he didn't deserve. He asked him, "Where are you at?" And asking that question, he was asking so much more. He was saying so much to Adam. He wasn't saying, "Where are you at physically? I know where that is." He's like, "But where are you at? I want to hear from you. I care about you." So, you guys, if you're young and you want to go on a date with a girl, guys, here's a tip. You guys don't want to go on a date with a girl. Just don't. You guys over here, if you guys want to go on a date with a girl, don't ramble on about everything you know. Don't go on about all the things that you can do, how awesome you are. Don't try and impress them with all your abilities. Simply ask them a lot of questions. Ask them who they are. Ask them where they're at in life. Ask them what they're doing. Ask them something, anything about them. When you do that, you're telling them, I want to know more about you. Like, I care about where you're at, what you're doing, and I'm willing to invest my time and energy into you. I care about you and what you're going through, and I want to know that stuff. It's easy to do. Now, women, let us do it. Let us ramble on and tell us it's impressive, even though we're not. Just help us out here. But God is telling Adam, where are you at? Like, I care about you. I want to know. I'm here to invest in you. I want to have a relationship with you. I want you to tell me about you. It works with girls and it works with us, right? God wants us to tell him about him. He knows he's an expert in us, but he wants us to tell him. He's telling Adam, not where you're at physically. I know you're hiding in the bush. Like, I know that. But I also know you're hurting. I know you're messed up. I know you did something dumb. And I want to know where you're at emotionally. I want to know where you're at spiritually. Like, where are you at? I care about you. I'm here. I'm searching for you. Where are you? And Adam responds a very emotional response. He says in verse 10, he said, I heard you in the garden and I was afraid. You want to know where I'm at? Like, I'm scared because I was naked, so I hid. He goes, I'm scared. I'm afraid right now. I don't know what I did. I don't know why I did it. I don't know what you're going to think of me. I just want to hide. I'm hurt. I'm lost. That's where I'm at. And I want to say, this is all I really want to say today. God is pursuing you. God is pursuing the people that are afraid. God's pursuing the people that are scared. He's pursuing the people that are hurt. He's pursuing the people that are lost. And he's asking, like, where are you? Like, I'm here searching for you. I care. I want you to answer me. I know you, but I want you to answer me. Where are you at? God knows where we are, but he cares enough to be asking, where are you? And he's patient enough to wait for our response. He really wants us to tell him. He's an expert in us, but he wants us to tell him anyway. And God's always pursuing that type of relationship with us. Psalm 139 illustrates this in a lot of ways. We want to look at it, a few verses of it anyway. And the first point I have with Psalms 139 is God knows the real you. I said it over and over. God's an expert in us. He knows us. And he knows us sometimes better than ourselves. And we'll read the first 4 verses. You searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit, you know when I rise, you know when you perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You're familiar with all my ways. Before a word was even in my tongue, you, Lord, knew it completely. David's writing the psalm and he's painting a picture of God's knowledge. Like, God knows us. He truly is an expert in us. He knows everything about our past. He knows everything that we have done. He knows everything that we're currently doing. He knows everything that we're going to do. He knows everything that we have gone through. He knows everything that people have done to us. He knows our hurts. He knows our pains. He knows our joys. He knows our successes. He knows our failures. He knows exactly what has happened and exactly what will happen with us. And he knows the real you. And he might be the only one. God might be the only one that really knows you, because we do very well at hiding from each other. We're very fearful that if others figure out who we really are, they're going to judge us. If other people really figure out who we really are, they're not going to be around us. Like, if people really knew who I was, they're not going to want to come and listen to me speak. If I really know who you are, I wasn't going to want to speak to you guys on a Sunday morning. Like, we do really good about covering our face. We can be really good at hiding from other people. And if we're lucky, maybe our spouse knows us well enough to know the true us. Maybe a parent, but very few people really know us. We can be really good at hiding from people. We all put a mask on, and we never really let people see our true face, like our bare face, like who we are, our bare soul. We're really good at covering up with makeup. We're really good at adding the accessories to cover our insecurities. And we never show our face. Well, God sees us for who we really are. God sees you without the makeup, without the accessories, without the car, without the jacket. And he loves you. He sees everything about us, and he's not here to judge us or condemn us. He's here to ask you, where are you? I'm here, and I know, and I love you. Romans 5:8. But God demonstrate his own love for us in this, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. I hope you guys know this verse well, because I think I put it in there every single week, because it's so important to know that before we gave anything to God, before we put any makeup on, before we try to make ourselves look any better than we are, he knows us. He knows us in our sin. He knew us every thought and every intention of our heart, not just our actions. And he loves us. God knows us. He's an expert in us. And he's asking us, where are you at? I'm here. I'm searching for you. Where are you? The second point is God is closer than we think. God is closer than we think. And we're going to read 7 and 8. Just 7 and 8. Psalm 139, 7 and 8. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you're there. And if I make my bed in the depths, the lowest places, the darkest places, you're still there. There are times that we try to run from God. We don't want to see God. We know where God is, and we do our best to avoid that place. Like, we know who God's with, and we want to avoid that person. Like, we don't want to be around God. We try to hide, and David was someone that tried to hide from time to time because he had sin and inequity in his life. But God's there. Like, we can't go anywhere. And one of the best compliments this church got this week was we were talking with someone, and she said, when I walk in the door, God's there. Like, I love coming in that place. Like, I walk in the door and someone needs to go to church, and I tell them, if you just came and you walked in the door, like, you would see God, you would feel God. And it's not because Nathan and the band's so great, which they are. It's not because I'm great, trust me. And you guys are great and make it feel welcoming. And that's not even all of it, but that's why I blamed on first service was you guys. But really, we have people praying for God to be here. We invite as a collective group for God's presence here, and he's here, and people feel that. But some people will run from that. We think, just show up here, God, and let the people come. But some people are in a place right now that they're trying to run and hide from that. They know where God is and says, I'll never go there. They know God's with that person. I'll never be friends with that person. But we can't go anywhere without being with God. We can't run. Jonah tried to run from God. God said, go over there and I'll be with you. And he tried to go that way. And he goes as far as that way. Guess what? He found God over there. God's everywhere. I said at the beginning of this whole thing that I love hearing when people encounter God. I ask the youth group all the time, what has God done for you? Because God's around us. He's closer than we think. He's in our everyday life. When he shows up in our everyday, that's a good day. And when we see it and recognize it, and there's nowhere we can go without God, so we should be seeing him everywhere. We went on a canoe trip with the youth group yesterday morning. It was all day, I think, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., where we were canoe trip, and then we spent the day on the beach, and we had some lunch, and then we canoed back, and we got back at 7 p.m. And we were with the beach. It was crowded. And at one point, having lunch, we're in a pavilion, and we had one little picnic table, and there were multiple picnic tables around there. And then there was a whole beach of people. So I stood up really loudly and announced that Alyssa Dexter hit her first over-the-fence home run in the championship game, which was coached by Coach Fritch, and we had a lot of people. And so I very loudly, and so everyone in our group and then other people heard that Alyssa Dexter hit an over-the-fence home run in a championship game, which they won and were undefeated for the season and had a great season. So then a guy from another table called me over, and he was from Mayville. And he heard me talking with the group. He's like, what church are you with? And we got talking, and he told me about the church he goes to, and we just talked about God. Like, God was there, and this perfect stranger connected us just because I was loud. and then I'm walking down the beach kind of by myself, I was between the groups. Somehow they all left me because they're smart. And so I was finding my way to them, and I must have had a Child of God shirt on or something, I don't know. And one of the guys says, I really like your shirt, and I know it's some group, are you guys with the church group? And we got talking, and he was from Royal Oak and telling me a little bit of his life story, his walk with God, and I'm like, God's here, at the beach. Here's this guy from Royal Oak here at the same time I am and sees me and talks with me, and we're talking a little bit, and the kids were like, oh, Jeremy made another friend, and Then our kids were trying to like, get this huge log out in the water in the lake, and they're riding on it like a boat, kind of, and rolling off it. And this elderly man was like, "What's going on?" And so we get talking. Well, he was from Kansas, and he comes up 2 weeks out of the year to volunteer at a lighthouse. And this was the day off, so the beach, and we're talking about how God works in our lives, and God's in Kansas too. I didn't know that. And he's telling me about how God's doing things in his life. And here I am at the beach, and there's 3 or 4 people just showing me that God's everywhere. Like, we can't even go to the beach to have fun without being around God, and that's pretty cool. Like, God's everywhere. He shows up everywhere I go, and I see him, and there's God's stories, and people connecting me. Just because God exists, we connect. We can't go anywhere, we can't hide from him, but sometimes we want to. And it's a good day when we see him when we're feeling good, but the bad days when we're not feeling that great, and we go and we try and hide from him in the depths of the place that hopefully no one sees us. And guess what? David said, "You're there too." Adam tried to hide from God in a bush, but God showed up and said, "I'm here. Where are you at?" Adam tried to hide because he was afraid, because he had fear. And David sometimes tried to hide, and he talks about trying to hide because he had guilt and shame of some real sin in his life. He said, "I'm trying to make my beds in the place where you'll never see, like underneath all, and the lowest place I can find. And guess what? I find you there too." And this is a good thing, because God's not there to punish us and reprimand us. God's there to help us and to love us. He says, "I'm here." Like, where are you at? And in verse 10, we see that even there, the worst spot, your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. God's closer than we think, and that is so good. The third thing is, God's always been there. This isn't new. It's really easy for us to be us focused. It's really easy to say, "I surrendered my life to Christ, and that's when my relationship with God started." That's not true. God has always been there. He's always been working in our life. It's easy for us to give ourselves the credit, but the fact is, we can't pursue God unless he was pursuing us first. We're going to read 13 through 16. Only 13 through 16. I went way over first service. "For you created me in my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before I came to be." God ordained all of our days before we even took one breath. Before we were one day old, he was pursuing us and leading us and showing us, and had a plan ready for each and every single one of us. Before we took a single step or a breath, or saw the light of the day for the first time. Before we were unable to pursue God and grow closer to God, he was pursuing us and allowing that to happen one day in the future. God's been working our lives from the very beginning, from the beginning of time, but also from the beginning of our lives. And he has a purpose for each and every one of us in here today. And he's been working out that purpose before you even knew he existed. I think it's important to know that our relationship with God didn't start at our conversion. It started way before that. Listening to Lori's story this week and some others, it got me thinking about my own. Because I didn't accept Jesus as my Savior until I was about 25, somewhere around there. And that was a big moment. That was a moment that God was pursuing me, and it was a point that I couldn't hide from anymore, and a point that I had to surrender. And I cried out to God, and God responded in a great way, and he changed my life. I mean, that was a great moment. But it wasn't the start of my relationship with God. I thought it was for a lot of years, and it wasn't until I got a little more mature and a little bit more knowledgeable of God and a little bit deeper in relationship with God, then I learned a little bit more about him, and I built a strong relationship. I could look back and see that God was always there. Like, it didn't start with me saying, "All right, God, now I'm here. It's nice to meet you." He was always there. I grew up Catholic. I had a lot of questions in my mind throughout that whole process. And when we're getting confirmed and we're doing a communion, God put a lot of questions like, is it making sense to you? Is this real? Is this what, like the priesthood even? I questioned that. And God was pursuing me to dig deeper with him and learn about that stuff. But I was lazy. I didn't care. I ignored that call. In high school, there was an event, See at the Pole, where the kids gather around the pole and they pray. It's a student-led event. There was a girl, a Christian girl, who was very pretty, I thought anyway. And she asked me to that event. I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And then she said, are you a Christian? Do you love God? I said, well, I go to Catholic church every Sunday, so yeah, probably. And she goes, well, what do you believe about God? I'm like, I don't know. Like, what do Catholics believe about God? I don't know. I just showed up there or I get beat by my parents. I don't know what to tell you. But that convicted me because here this girl is that I was pursuing, but God was pursuing her, and she's asking me how God's pursuing me, and I had no clue. And I'm like, I probably should know that stuff. Like, I'm not 4 anymore. Like, I'm 13, 14, 15 years old. I probably should know what this whole God thing is about, but I didn't really pursue that. But God's planting this. He's asking Jeremy, where are you at into this stuff? Like, where are you at when it comes to me? Where are you at with your emotional relationship with me? And there were times in high school that I partied a lot of times, and I was doing everything that you could possibly do when you party, absolutely everything. And I knew though, like there's something in there. God was telling me, like, this ain't right. This ain't good. This ain't the life that God has for you. He was asking, like, where you at, Jeremy? Like, I see you passed out on the floor, but like, where are you at? Like, what's going on? Like, I'm here, but where are you? And in college, I studied psychology and had every opportunity to jump into the world point of view on creation and motivation of behavior and just all those thoughts and all that whole idea. I had every opportunity to jump into that and just embrace that and make that my worldview. But I knew, like, this doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense. God's asking, like, where are you at in this stuff, Jeremy? Like, do you believe that or do you believe this? Where are you at? Like, I'm here, but where are you? And I didn't really make a step towards him. And I was looking for a girlfriend. Well, I was looking to lose a few, but then I was looking for the right one. And I was not looking for a Christian girl. I'll just say that up front. I wasn't looking for a Christian girl, but God drew me to April. And he had a plan for our relationship. And he knew that in order for me to be right here, right now, I was going to need someone to help me get there and someone to help me foster the relationship. And so, like, he said, this is my plan I have for you. And he drew me closer to April and himself. And I wouldn't be here today without her. So if you like me at all, it's her fault. And if you don't, I can give you her phone number. Text her, not me anymore. Um, but he had a plan for a relationship. He knew that I was going to need something. He was caring for me before I even thought to pursue him. He was asking, where are you at with this relationship with girls? Where are you at with what you want to do with your marriage? Where are you at with this stuff? And I ignored him. And all those things. There's so many more where examples of God was calling me and asking me, where are you at? I'm here. I'm walking in the cool of the day in this perfect garden, looking for you, but where are you at? God's saying, I'm protecting you. I'm calling you, and I know you, and I want to hear from you because I care about you. Where are you? And it didn't stop at conversion. That was a great moment where I said, I'm here, God. I'm right here. And he said, great, come on, let me show you. But then he continued to pursue me, and he sent mentors into my life, and he sent people to teach me about the Bible, and people encouraged me to read the Bible, and people encouraged me to go to church and show me a church. And he kept pursuing me. And he's doing it now, like right now. He's saying, Jeremy, I know you hurt. I know you're lonely. I know you're this. I know you're that. Like, where are you at? I'm still here. And he has some great things planned for me. And he's saying, let me show you, where are you at? Where you're at with your future. Is that mine or is that yours? And I can promise you, God is pursuing you the same exact way. He's pursuing you with the same intensity through everything that you've been through. He's known. He says, I care. Like, where are you at with this stuff? This stuff has to hurt. This has to isolate you. This has to make you feel lonely. This has to feel bad. Where are you at? He's pursuing you in the same way that he pursued Adam and Eve after they sinned in the garden. He's pursuing you the same way that he pursued Hagar, we talked about last week, when she was trying to run away from her problems. He's pursuing you the same way he pursued Elijah when he was trying to run from Ahab and Jezebel. He's pursuing you the same way that he pursued Paul when he was walking down the Damascus road trying to murder his people. He's calling out to you. He's saying, I'm here. Like, where are you? I care. I want to know, like, where are you at with this emotional stuff? Where are you at with the spirituality stuff? Where are you at with your success? Like, I'm here. Where are you? In verse 17 and 18 of Psalm 139, he says, how precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. If I were to count them, they would outnumber the grains of the sand. When I wake, I am still with you. God knows the real us, and He's thinking about us. His thoughts about us is more than the sand on the beach. And I was thinking, like, we're on the beach yesterday, and it got me thinking about the psalm. And we were walking across the sand. There was a lot of it because it was hot. And I'm like, the sand's never going to end. I got to get off this thing. And now Don's way over miles away, and he was looking at the sand on the beach. I mean, the number of grains of the sand is God's thoughts about us. He knows us. He knows the real us. And He loves us. And He cares us enough to ask, where are you at? And He's going to continually pursue us and draw us closer into a personal relationship with Him. And all the whole way, He's going to be saying, I'm here in the garden. Where are you? Let's take that next step. I'm here. I'm great. You're with me. What's your future look like? I'm here. Here's some mentors to help you along the way. Here's a spouse to help you along the way. Here's some things I have for you. And He's going to, it's like He's wiping our makeup off our face and removing all of our crutches and our inequities. And He's saying, I'm here. Where are you? That's the question He has for us today. So as the band comes forward, we'll pray. Father, we thank You so much for pursuing us. We thank You that before we could take credit for anything, before we even open up our Bible, before we could read, before we could say our first prayer, before we could join our first church service, that You were pursuing us. You were setting things in place that we could possibly understand or search for You because You were pursuing us. God, You set so many things in motion before we even took a breath on this earth and made it possible that we could answer You when You said, where are You? And we could say, I'm here. Please take me. God, we thank You that You're pursuing us in the midst of all of our struggles. You pursue us even though You know us. Like, You know us more than we know ourselves even. You know us more than our spouses know us. You know us more than anyone in this church knows us. God, You know us, and You delight in us. And You say, I'm here, I'm showing up, I'm pursuing You. And all we have to do is say, I'm here, Lord. I'm right here. God, we thank You for that opportunity. God, we thank You for loving us the way You do. God, we thank You for showing up in our lives every single day. We can't go anywhere without You being there, God. Open our eyes to see You. Open our ears to hear You. Open up our desire to pursue You the way You're pursuing us, because, God, we want to run to those deep, dark places sometimes. We want to hide. We don't want people to see us, let alone You see us, God. Give us the confidence to just stand before You and say, I'm here. I'm scared. I'm lonely. I'm afraid. I'm cold. I'm hot. I just need You. And God, thank You for not rejecting us. That's our biggest fear, is that we're going to be rejected by others and to be rejected by You, and You just never do that. So God, we thank You for that. Thank You for sending Your Son down here to do all the things that You do to save the lost. We're lost, God. I'm scared and lonely and lost, and Your Son died for me because of that, so that I could be found. And we're just so thankful for that, God. Thank You for loving us and drawing us closer to You, and please, please keep doing it. Every single day we need You. Every hour we need You, and we love You. Amen.